So unfortunately today Dr. Wendy is sick, and so we are going to have the opportunity to listen to our Executive Director, Deborah Hendricks.
I don't know if that's a good thing or bad. Well, it's not like you haven't heard from me before, but Dr. Wendy is got sick this afternoon, and so I have to pinch it for her tonight, and hopefully I'll do her justice. I'll call her afterwards and say, I think I said everything you would have said, maybe. But welcome to our new family orientation for those that have scholars in private, public, and charter school. And we do this purposely to really talk about the importance of engagement. So one of the things is, just as a reminder for Parents Challenge, is that we are not a scholarship organization. Even though we provide scholarships and grants, we are not. We are a parental engagement organization because we create partnerships with parents to make sure that they stay engaged in their scholars' education. We have 3 seats up here. It's like when you come to church late, you have to come to the front. So we have 3 seats up front, 4 seats up front that are open. So please come on up front. Don't be shy. So as we talk about today in terms of parent-teacher conferences, we're going to be taking kind of a different spin on looking at what that actually means. So as we've already mentioned to you before, is that you are your child's first teacher. You're your child's first teacher. And that means that we got seats up here. Come on, ladies. Come on up. There's 2 seats there. There's 1 seat here. There's 1 seat over there. Okay. So being your child's first teacher means that you've got to make sure you stay engaged in what's happening, all aspects of their education. So when we think about this in terms of parent-teacher conferences, that means that parent-teacher conferences don't start upon invitation. They start the first day that your child goes to school. That's when parent-teacher conferences start. So we'll talk about what that means. So as we talk about how do we empower student learning through parent-teacher conferences, so it should never be a surprise when you go to a parent-teacher conference regarding the progress of your child. You shouldn't say, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know they weren't doing well. I didn't know there was a behavior issue. I didn't know. You should. You should know before you get there what's going on. And we'll talk about how to do that. So let me give you a little background about Dr. Wendy. You have her bio was still handed out to you. She's an extraordinary lady, but one of the things that she talks about is, although she's the superintendent of District 2, also she was named the superintendent of the year for Colorado this year. She's an extraordinary lady, but she talks about this topic from the perspective of a parent. So she had a son who was on the spectrum, a little autistic, and had to teach him how to defend or to advocate for himself. And at the high school level, at one point, he was going to a private school, and that didn't work. Then he went to a public school that worked better for him, but he had to learn how to advocate. So she talks about it from the perspective of, I was a parent, and yes, I was a teacher. She was also a principal, and then became an administrator, and now superintendent of Harrison School District 2. So in looking at this whole topic, it's really all about, what do we as parents need to do? We don't need helicopter parents. those that are just hovering over looking for something wrong all the time. But more so, we need engaged parents that are going to be looking for opportunities to make sure that their scholar is doing well. So we're going to look at what are parent-teacher conferences, what should we expect before, during, and after, and then that whole component of parent advocacy and what does that look like. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is a little reflection. So the handout that you have in front of you, I'd like you to think about the time in school or during conferences. Make a note of one positive thing you remember. Now this is about you, parents. This is about when you think about your parents going to parent-teacher conferences or you being involved. What was that one positive thing that you remembered? Maybe a teacher said something or a coach said something. And then make a note of one negative thing that you remembered from that parent-teacher conference. So you got to think back. Some of you longer than some of us. Some of you longer than or earlier than I would have to think back. So mine would be really a long time. But what was that one positive? And then what was that one negative that you remembered regarding your parent-teacher conference? If some of you are having a hard time, then use your students' information. If you can't think of your own, use your students. What's one positive and then one negative that you recall? All right, who's brave enough to share? Oops, look at that hand went up in the back like really fast. She really wants to share.
Yeah, not really though. I don't know what.
Okay, so the positive would be like the praise, just as simple as that.
Okay.
And then the negative was, I just remember there's a time that a teacher brought up something that they'd never brought up before all year long, and then they brought it up during the conference.
Okay, all right. All right, who else? Okay.
My positive one was I always got kudos for being respectful to my teachers, but then negative, I wasn't good at math, and the teacher even called my mom about incomplete homework.
It's like, don't be telling them I didn't turn stuff in.
So mine kind of goes along with being a good parent support. And my mom was an Irish immigrant with no formal secondary education. And so she just said, get straight A's and you'll get a scholarship. Well, I did get straight A's, so I got praise in those parent-teacher conferences, but the negative was that nobody helped me get to college. And I didn't know how to get to college. And my mom didn't know how to get me to college. So the straight A's just
Didn't help?
no. But I finished my degree when I was 38 years old.
Wow. Okay. So praise, getting kudos from teachers, getting good grades in school, but sometimes a lack of support or things being brought up that were never talked about in a conference. But then also making sure that you know this ahead of time, because conferences shouldn't be gotcha type sessions. They should be sessions of where do we progress? Where are we going? What comes up next? So when we think about that, why are conferences important? Well, one, as a parent, so I have two girls that went to both public schools and charter schools. and I moved them based on what I thought they needed at that point in time. And anytime we did conferences, especially at the middle and high school level, they were involved in the conference. So how many of you have taken your scholars to the conference with you? You sit in and have conversation? Okay. So your scholars should be part of the conference so that they can also hear the conversations or the discussions. Now, I would recommend that you don't take them to a conference if you've got contention going on, because you don't want your scholar to hear issues happening between you and the teacher. Why? Because that just creates issues for that scholar in the classroom in terms of either I'll call my mom if you do this, or vice versa. Okay? So we want to be better parents. We want to also make sure that our child's needs are addressed. How many of you go to conferences with questions that you want to ask, with things that you're concerned about? So we're going to talk about why it's important to do that and not just go in and say, okay, how's Johnny doing? And let the teacher rattle off everything. Because Parent-Teacher Conference, remember that piece, it's a Parent-Teacher Conference. That means that it's just as important for the parent to be involved in it as it is the teacher. Okay? All right. So research, we know, says that when parents are involved, and again, this is why we talk about a parental engagement component. When parents are involved, and this is research, our scholars' grades are better. Our scholars attend school regularly. And when we look at K through 5, you're really in total control, should be, of scholars getting to school on time, making sure they're prepared, making sure they've had breakfast, making sure they're dressed appropriately, making sure they've got all their stuff in their backpacks. Middle and high school, some of that should shift a little bit, where you're now holding them accountable for getting themselves ready for school, getting their lunch prepared, unless they eat at school, making sure their backpacks. How many of you, your scholars, just seem to forget to turn in their homework? You know they did it. You even saw them. And they put it in their backpack, right? But it disappeared from the bus or getting out of the car and getting into the building. I think there must be a hole between the car or the bus and the sidewalk and going in the building. I think there must be a hole there, because I don't know how many students lose their homework before they get to their first class. So we got to figure out, how do we incentivize them to turn in their work? Okay? Better social skills, graduate and go to post-secondary education, and more opportunities for college and career. But part of this also is you asking questions, you making sure that you're getting the good information that schools provide. There are so many resources. So K-5, parents, raise your hand. Okay. 6-8. 9-12. How many of you have them in all grades? Okay. All right. So there's so many opportunities, but sometimes we don't know why, because we haven't connected with our schools. So if I could know I could give my child all those things, I want you to sign me up. If I knew that all those things that are listed are going to be provided, and they are, They absolutely are. So now let's talk a little bit about what do we know about conferences? What are they? What are conferences? Regardless of what it says on the screen. What are conferences? Check-ins. Check-ins. What else? Absolutely. Problem-solving opportunities. What else? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Opportunity for praise, for kudos, for acknowledgement. What else? What are conferences for?
I see it as a time to plan strategy for your kids moving forward.
Strategies for helping your kids move forward. Yeah. So it's not just a specific time. Most of the schools have conferences when? Official. October, and then in the spring, in February. So how many of you, your scholars are already in school? Okay, how many of you, your scholars are starting in the next week or so? Okay, so kind of half and half. So that means everybody's starting in August, right? So August, all of September, most of October, that's almost 2.5 months. If you wait till then, you only have another 1.5 months, and it's the end of the semester. So if you wait for 2.5 months before you check in, you might have some problems. So we've got to look at, what are they? Certainly a meeting. When do they occur? Sometimes they occur again when the school schedules them. But frankly, they should occur the first day your kids go to school. How does that happen? How do you have a parent-teacher conference the first day of school? How do you do that?
Introduce yourself to your child's teacher.
Say that again?
Introduce yourself to your child's
Yes, yes. When you drop off your scholar, you introduce yourself. Now, I know some of you can't take them to the building. How many of you got kindergartners? Did you have a hard time dropping them off? They put you out. They tell you have to go because you make them cry. You cry more than them. But the idea is that even if you can't take them to the school, drop them off, you should make sure that a message is given by your scholar to the teacher. And what should be on there? Your contact information. My email, my phone number, or whatever your mode of connection is. That way the teacher already knows who's Johnny's parent or guardian or aunt or uncle or whomever. They already have that information. So if you've not done that, make sure that your scholar takes that information. If you've had a chance to introduce yourself, kudos. Because you want to make sure that the teacher knows that you are a concerned and involved parent. You want them to know, I want to connect with you, not just when my scholar is doing something wrong. I want to connect with you when they're doing things right. And I also want to know what's going on so that I can better support them. So when we think about when they occur any time, not at a scheduled time. A lot of us wait, and sometimes that's too late. It's too late for our scholars. And our scholars need to know that I'm connected at your school. My kids would say to their friends would say, your mom's in the building. And they'd say, okay, or you must be in trouble. No, my mom's always in the building. Not to check on them, but sometimes I'm there just to see just how the ambiance is in the school. I sometimes like to visit classes that my students don't even attend. It's not their teachers. because I just like to make sure all students are getting what they need. So if all students are getting it, then I know my students are getting them too. My children are. All right. So student-led conferences. Middle and high school students for sure should always be in the conference with you. They should be the ones actually running the conference. They should be telling you what they're doing. They should be able to show you their work. They should be able to have questions that they're asking in terms of their overall progress regarding their learning. So when you think about student-led conferences, this is an opportunity where your scholar gets to showcase what they've been doing. They have a chance then to show their work during that conference. Now, if there are certainly questions or concerns that you have after your scholar has presented their work, then you just ask them to leave the room and then you have a conversation with the teacher. Because at that time, you might want to ask a question related to how is my scholar's work compared to others at the same grade level? Now, they can't show you other scholars' work, but they can tell you in terms of where your scholar might be compared to other scholars, especially if your scholar may be struggling in a subject area, or they might need some extra support if they're a special needs scholar. Or the other piece is, if you know that they're just coasting, you know they have it in them to do much better than what they're doing, and you'd like them to be at this level, then there's an opportunity for you then to ask for higher level work. You can ask for that. If your scholar's in 5th grade and you believe that they are reading at a 6th grade level, then ask for some 6th grade work so that they get smarter and don't stay average. Okay? If you believe your scholar can do extra work, then ask for that extra work to keep them motivated and loving school. All right, so how many times a year should these conferences happen? And we've already talked a little bit about the fact that they should happen any time you feel the need. Any time you feel the need, conferences should happen. Now, I always encourage parents, as much as you might want to think that your scholar never does anything wrong, your child is the best child ever. When they are away from you, they sometimes are not the best children ever. Sometimes when they're with you, they're not the best children ever. But sometimes we say, oh, my child would never do that. Yes, they would. I've seen some of them. And I'll say to them, now, what would your mom say if she saw you doing that? Don't tell her, don't tell her. Don't tell her. I'm like, okay, I won't tell her, but you better straighten up. So just remember that as much as we say that we've got the sweetest and most well-behaved child, sometimes when they are away from the nest, they're not always that sweet and well-behaved. And we have to realize that. So sometimes when you get a call from the teacher saying that Mary today pulled somebody's hair, don't say, oh, she would never do that. I've taught her better. But she did. She pulled the other kid's hair and took her barrettes. Okay, and she didn't want to play with folks in the sandbox. And at the high school and middle school level, they're even worse because they just do it on social media. Okay? So when we think about getting ready for our check-ins, then on your sheet, on your list, we're going to look at what are we going to do before the conference. So one of the things that we want to make sure that we keep track of all of our records. We want to keep track of all of the previous work. And if there's anything that has come home or any information that you've received that you need to verify or you need corrections on, make sure you take that information with you to the conference and have that available. Again, whether it's the formal conference or not. What questions might your scholar want to ask? What questions might they want to ask? Make sure you ask them. Now, some of your scholars won't want to participate in the student-led conferences, and that's okay. Even at the middle and high school level, we'd love for them to do that, but if they don't, that's okay. But you want to make sure at least you ask, are there some specific questions you'd like me to ask the teacher during the conference? Is there something in particular you'd like me to address with them? Look at their homework and their grades. All schools have portals to some degree, or they have progress reports. Have you logged in? If you haven't, log in. Because on those portals, especially at the higher grades, there should be syllabus, so you'll know exactly the work that is required for the whole semester. So you don't have to guess, and neither does your scholar have to guess. And at the lower grades, they will normally have all the matrices for what needs to be done or what they're going to be addressing. Do you know what the standards are? What are the state standards? Even if you're at a private school, they may not utilize some of the assessments and things of that nature, but there are standards. What is it that they should learn at the kindergarten level, at the first grade level, at the third grade level, at the fifth grade level? There are some things that they are supposed to know by the time they finish. And you should know what those are. What are the questions that you want to ask? And then look at being open to collaborate. If you know that your scholar might be more active than others and therefore can't sit still, has trouble finishing their work, or whatever the case might be, I always say, assume positive intent when the teacher tells you they're not getting their work turned in on time. We're giving them extra time, but they're still not getting it turned in on time. Then let's figure out what's a possible solution you can come up with to support the scholar in that effort. But always assume positive intent. All right, so what is the action that you need to focus on before conferences this year? So as you think about those of you who have one scholar, if you've got multiple scholars, what's your focus this year that you want to focus on as you think about conferences this year? So take a couple of minutes and write down some things that you want to make sure you inquire about your scholars as you begin this year. If you have some transitional things from last year that maybe weren't complete or they worked on during the summer, maybe they went to summer school because they needed to get caught up, or they had some tutoring that was done. But what are some things that you want to make sure is your focus before conferences this year, the official conferences begin? Because some of them you may want to do that before October. How many of you, this is your first scholar going to school this year? So we got a couple. So I'm going to provide you a couple of questions that you can consider if you've not thought about some of these. So, what do you see as your child's strengths? What are some areas that they're really good in? What are some areas where they can improve? What's their level of participation in class? Are they a participant, or do they just kind of just sit back and not engage? Is homework handed in on time? Are they meeting whatever the grade level expectations are? Again, you need to know what is it that they need to know at this particular grade level. And the biggest piece, and this is the huge piece for parents, what can you do to help them at home? What are the things that you can do to support your scholar at home? I know nowadays schools don't give as much homework, which can be a good or bad. That just kind of depends. Some say they don't give homework because they want families to be able to spend time together at home. And I appreciate that, because when they get out of school at what? 3:30, 3 o'clock or so, many of them are participating in sports or clubs or other types of activities. And parents typically may get home, if you're working, 5 o'clock, 5:30, and if they're finished with their homework or not finished with their homework, then you're trying to eat, and then it's time to go to bed. So sometimes it's hard if they've got 2-3 hours of homework to do as well. So I'm a proponent sometimes with homework if a scholar is really struggling, but I'm not a proponent just to have homework for the sake of having homework. So I would even have conversations sometimes with teachers in regard to that. They're spending 2 hours, especially at the lower grades, 2 hours of homework, that's way too much. I'm sorry, that's too much. And I'll tell a teacher that any day. The higher level for your high school students or students that are taking college classes and things of that nature, there may be a lot of reading or writing papers, etc. But when they've got too much homework where there's no downtime, that's mentally exhausting for any child and any family, and you're going to be fighting all the time because they're tired and you're tired, and then we've got 3 hours of homework. That's too much. So I'd have conversations with the teacher. It's too much. Now, is my scholar struggling? Then help me to figure out a plan of action, but I'm not going to spend 3 hours on homework. So that's my little advice to you when you have your conversations with your teachers. All right, let's talk about a checklist time. You want to check the list of what you want to do before the conferences, and then identify a star, the actions you do now, and identify something that you want to do this year. So if you think about that list that we just looked at, what is it that you're already doing on that list before conferences, and what is it that you need to start doing that you're currently not doing? The other piece is that the other handout that you have that talks about questions to solidify your partnership with the teacher, take a look at that because it talks about what's your preferred method of asking questions. Email, phone, note in the planner. Again, what can you do to support them to make your job easier? What can you do at home? And then how can you best stay on top of what's happening at school and in the classroom? So think about what you're currently doing, and then where is there an opportunity for me as a parent to get better at this? Where's an area that I can get better at this? All right. Who should go to conferences? Yeah, everybody and anybody. No. Certainly the parents. But you know, I see these guys in here, dads, go to conferences. A lot of times it's just the moms who go to the conferences. If they're dads, go to the conferences. It's good for the teacher to see the dads involved. Sometimes even take grandpas with you. It's just good for them to see families invested in their children, their grandchildren, their guardians, or whatever. But if you are a couple, please, dads go. And sometimes moms don't go, let the dads go. It's a totally different perspective sometimes. Okay? But everybody should go. Who should attend? Everybody should attend. Your scholars should attend with you. I've had situations where whole families would show up for the conference. All the kids would come, parents would come. Teacher was probably a little overwhelmed. But it was great to see that we're all engaged in this learning process. It's not just the person who's in the classroom. It's a family affair. It's a family affair. And I know a lot of times you only get, 15, 20 minutes or whatever. I would always schedule mine as the last appointment, because then I could get all the time. I'd take them a little Starbucks card. little Starbucks drink sometimes. Get the last conference, because then I didn't have to rush out of there in 20 minutes because I had more questions than 20 minutes would allow. But I certainly was respectful when I did have to go in between other people. And the main thing is that during conferences, let's talk about that now. Biggest piece, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we need to do twice as much listening as we do talking. Because a lot of times we can talk, and we don't hear a thing that's going on. So we need to listen, take notes, don't make assumptions. And when you take your notes, be accurate in the information that you write down. Because if you need to paraphrase and come back, you don't want to be accusatory. You want to make sure that this is what I heard you say. Help me to understand, is that what you meant? Or can you clarify what you just said? You used a lot of acronyms and I have no idea what any of them mean. So I'm not sure if my kid is smarter or dumber, or I'm smarter or dumber. So I just want to make sure before I leave that there's some clarification who knows what's going on. Be on time. Don't come in there late and then think you're going to get somebody else's time. Be on time. And being on time doesn't mean getting there a minute before your appointment. You need to be there at least 5 to 10 minutes early so that you can transition in, be able to sit down, and then be able to transition out. Don't be late. And then don't get upset if you are late when they tell you, I got another parent waiting. And you say, well, I still need my 20 minutes. Well, you should have been there on time. So be on time. Be respectful. Stay calm. Again, positive intent. Offer your perspective. Does it align with what you see at home? Again, have your questions already formulated, what you're going to ask. Important questions first. And why do we want important questions first? Yes, in case you run out of time. Some of the other questions could maybe be sent in an email or follow up with them. You want to make sure that you ask the most important questions first. Yes, in the back.
Do you have a concern you want to address? Do you have verbiage on how to convey your concern about offending the teacher or offending the curriculum or offending the school?
You know, we're going to talk about a couple of what ifs. So hold on to that, and then we'll make sure that we answer that. Develop a plan. Does the school have extra resources? How will the student get support in class? When will you talk to the teacher again to check in? All of that. Realize that your child is one child out of however many are in that class. If it's K through 5, in most cases they have a homeroom, so therefore that teacher is with that group of students the entire time. Middle and high school, they start to change classes, so therefore that teacher might see upwards, 200 kids a day that are coming through that particular class, so it depends. So just realize that your scholar is one. I know your scholar is the most important to you, and they should be. But realize they may not be the most important to that teacher because they've got 30 kids in that classroom. Doesn't mean that your scholar is not important. So don't get offended by that. Yes, they should know their name. They should know who they are. But they may not know every little detail about them. You do. So just make sure again that you remember that. So here are some questions to ask during conferences, and then I'd like you to think about on your handout, what action do you need to take during conferences this year? So again, you can ask to see your child's work compared to a student on grade level if your scholar's not on grade level. End of year goals, what should they learn by the end of the year? And again, how can you help? That's the crucial piece, is how can you help? So write down a thought on your paper, the action that I'm going to focus on during conferences this year, and then at your tables, let's do a little pair share. Does everybody know what that means? So, see, I use a term that you didn't know what it was, and you guys were like, okay. So pair share means that I'm just going to turn to a partner, and I'm going to share what I wrote. All right, so let's take a few minutes to do that.
We're sitting right under the air conditioner. Do you know who
Are
turned it
you?
off?
Oh,
yeah, we're
is that freezing?
Yeah. You know who we could ask or point us in the right direction?
Let me see, I was looking for Melissa.
'Cause we are like,
Are you?
look at us, we're shivering over here.
So you can go back there
Okay.
and see if Melissa, or you can go to the front desk and just tell them if they can turn that air
All right,
down.
cool, thank you.
Yes. 5. Oops, gotta turn it on. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So what are some of the things that we're going to focus on during conferences this year? Who wants to share?
I would definitely ask more questions. Instead of waiting for the teacher to ask me something, I will be prepared to ask my questions and not just wait to hear the bad news.
Okay. No bad news. No bad news. To hear good news because you're prepared. So asking questions, because that is crucial, to go in with a set of questions that you want to ask instead of waiting for the teacher and then trying to come up with stuff. But you should go armed with, and you may not get through all of them, and that's okay, but at least go prepared. What else?
I didn't talk about this, but one of the things I've found as they go to middle school, they don't have so much paper homework that they bring home anymore. It's all like digital grades and digital everything. And so it's been easy to lose track of like, how did she do on one thing or another? And so I'd like to be more proactive as far as, she does fine, but like, I never get to see her work. And so I'd like to be able to see something and
Okay.
ask about that.
All right. And that's important because now a lot of things are digitized. And so you may not see the paper component, but you want to know how they're doing. So they should be able to provide some of that even on the portal.
The teacher sent home a paper stating what do you want for your child to learn in school, so I put reading and writing. I did not realize that his 6-year-old cousin taught him that in Texas. And his first day in school, he come back and tell me, I wrote this sentence by myself and I read by myself. And I was surprised because I didn't know he had learned it.
Okay. All right. So sometimes, again, having those conversations with our scholars. Kindergarten through 5th grade, how many of you allow your scholars to read to you? Okay. Why that's important is you want to make sure they actually can read. Because I've seen them know how to read and they know how to track because they follow. And then when you ask them to read, they're making the story up. And they're not reading the word on the page. But they got a heck of a good story. Telling you. They will be creative for sure. Now, kindergarten and 1st grade, in most cases, you're going to read with them and as they're learning their sight words and all of that. But 2nd and 3rd grade, please have them read to you. And you read, make sure you're looking at the book. Because I've seen some kids in 4th grade, man, oh my goodness. They are going, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's such a good story. Looks like you're enjoying that. Can you read that to me? And they start reading it, but it's not a word on that page. It's a whole story that they made up because they've not learned how to read. Okay? So please make sure that your scholars are reading to you at that level. Certainly, hopefully, when they get to middle and high school, they're reading. But I do know scholars at the 9th grade level and sometimes graduating from high school who can't read their diploma. And they faked it the entire time. And they've been socially promoted to the next grade, to the next grade, to the next grade, Because they're a good kid. They don't get in any trouble. Nobody ever checks on them. They smile. They know how to deflect. When a teacher asks them to read in class, they'll say, "Why are you picking on me? Let somebody else read." That's because they can't read. So don't take it for granted. Ask them to read it. When you're in the car, signs. Have them read the signs on the highway. Read the billboards. Even at the older level, we play an alphabet game. So you got to find the letters. You got to go A all the way to Z. Sometimes I forget the letters. I have to go A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, I'm on F. But they have to find words with those letters in them. I mean, there's tons of things. The license plates game, you can do the same thing. If you don't know, find out before it's too late. Okay? Find out before it's too late. Make sure you check in before you go. So you're going to have a check-in before you start. Then you have a check-in during. And then we're going to also talk about a check-in, checklist after, because you want to make sure that you do your follow-up. So let's look at your after conferences. Now, when you have a conference, do you go home and tell your scholars what happened in the conference? You should. You should absolutely tell them. The good, the bad, the ugly. Here's our plan. These are the things you're doing extremely well, and we want to keep that up. These are the things that we may not be doing so well. And then here's the opportunity, parents, is to do contracts with your scholars when they're not doing well. Create contracts with them in terms of how they believe they can improve. What is it that they can do? And when they reach that, what's an incentive they would like? Maybe they get to watch an extra movie. Maybe they get to play on the PlayStation a little longer. Maybe they get to go take a nature walk around town. Doesn't matter what it is. I would ask, sometimes we think we know what our scholars want, but sometimes they just want a hug. Sometimes they just want to sit with you and read a book or watch a movie. My kids love watching cartoons, even now. They're 25 and 29. And I just think it's so crazy. We're watching Scooby-Doo. Okay. We're watching the Puff Puff Girls. Okay. And they love that stuff. And I'm like, those are so silly. But I watch them with them. That's what they want to do. So sometimes we think it's buying this and going here and going there. And sometimes it's something as simple as, can we just go for a walk around the neighborhood? Can we just get in the car and go for an ice cream cone at McDonald's? So think about creating things that they're really interested in doing in that plan. The plan doesn't have to be punitive. When it's punitive, who wants to do it? I'm doing it because I'm made to do it. You want them to enjoy school. This is their only job right now. That's why I used to tell my kids that wanted to get jobs. I'm like, you got a job. You got a full-time job. You go from 8 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's a full-time job. That's all I want you to do. Your job is to go to school and to do well. And that's how I'm going to support you. So think about, what are the things, if there are some areas that they're not doing well, how do you turn it into a positive instead of a negative? Because if you're browbeating them, guess what? It doesn't get better. It actually gets worse. They might need a little extra love. They get to spend a lot more time with you instead of their friends, instead of social media. So they don't want us to have that extra love with you, and they want to spend some more time with their friends, then we got to see some better grades. We got to see some better behavior. We got to see some better performance. Okay? So after conferences, we're going to share again, and we're going to look at that plan to promote support. I'm not saying that your scholars have to be A students, because sometimes they can get all A's and still be struggling. So you want to make sure that there's a good balance. Are your scholars stressed out to the point where they don't like going to school? Find out what that's all about. Find out what that's all about. Add some fun in their schedule. Add some fun in their life, period. And then your follow-up. Have your scholars participate in something outside of academics. Do they karate or theater or speech or dance or chess club or robotics or something? But have them involved in something that's not academics. And whether jump rope competitions or something. Sports, I mean, I wasn't a big sports person, but everybody thought I should be. You should be on somebody's basketball team. Well, I was, but I hated every minute of it. So I didn't make my kids do sports because that wasn't what they were interested in. So also, parents, don't be living through your children, trying to make them do stuff that you wanted to always do. I wanted to be a ballerina, so I'm going to make my kid do ballerina stuff. And they hate it. Let them do stuff that they really enjoy. My daughter said she wanted to play soccer, and I said, well, why do you want to play soccer? Because the uniforms are really cute. I'm like, that's not a good reason. You cannot afford soccer. Okay, come up with something else. We can find you some other uniforms that are cute. Okay, but find something that they want to do. Ask them questions about what they enjoy doing. And then get them involved in that. And maybe it's they're involved in this now, and then they might change and be involved in something else later, but it's okay. It's okay. And then check in with your teacher. Here's your conference again, checking in. And then also when you're checking in, think about this teacher is working with your scholar and everybody else's all year long. Every now and then, drop off a little apple, a little basket of goodies, a little card that just says, thank you for investing in my child. Don't wait till teacher appreciation, which is in May. They done slaved all year long, and then we want to tell them in May, thank you. That's too long. So try to think of, and even have your scholar participate. What do we want to get Miss Jones this month? What do you want to make? What do you want to, get some thank you cards. Have them create thank you cards. But that says volumes to that teacher. So don't wait till May when it's an official. I hate official holidays. I think holidays should be anytime you decide you want a holiday. But just look for opportunities to have your scholars thank their teachers for investing in them. Because that's huge. So that's part of your check-in. Check in to the teacher. Thank you so much for all that you do to help my child and all the other students in the classroom. So I volunteer at an elementary school every year. So every Friday, I go in and I spend a couple hours at an elementary school. And I do that. In fact, I had a shirt on yesterday for that school, and I was getting my windshield fixed, and the guy said, so are you a teacher? I said, no. He said, well, why do you have that shirt on? I said, because I'm a volunteer. And he said, well, they give their volunteers some nice shirts. I'm like, they do. And they said, well, do you have did your children go to that school? I said, no. Oh, well, why do you volunteer there? I said, because I just like to. And I've been volunteering at this school for maybe about 12 years. And I volunteer only at the kindergarten level. I only like to see them when they come in. And I just love it. They don't know their names, they don't know their alphabets, they don't know their colors. And they're so fun. But then I get to see them when they get promoted. And I know that, oh my goodness, now they know their names and their numbers and their colors and all of that. So it gives me great pride to see them develop. You know, a couple of them can't sit down straight. I'm trying to do testing with them and they're saying, are we done yet? Are we done yet? I said, no, we just kind of got through the first page. I got 5 more pages to go through with you. But I do that. And so one of the things that I think is always just important is looking for opportunities to help the teachers. They're overwhelmed. If all they had to do was teach reading, writing, and math, that would be fabulous. But they have to be parents, social workers, counselors, food providers, clothing providers, because some of our scholars come to school lacking some of those things. So all of you in Parents Challenge, be good parents. Send your children to school ready to learn. And if you need help with that, Parents Challenge is here to support you. So if there are areas that you need, let us know so that we can help you help your scholars be successful, because we don't want any to be behind. So here's a checklist of what to do afterwards. And you can just think about what's an action that you'll take after you've had your conferences. What are the things that you can do after you've had your conferences? So a couple other things in your packet. This handout that was put together, all this was put together by Dr. Wendy, by the way. So I'm just hopefully saying it the way, not exactly how she would say it, because she's much smarter than I am. But questions for the beginning of the year, lower grades and then upper grades, some of the types of questions that you can ask, questions to get a feel for your child's progress as they're going through. So you want to think about some of those things that you can do to support them. If your child is excelling academically, what things can you do at home? There are tons and tons of resources on the internet also that you can look at checking into. How many of you are familiar with Khan Academy? Okay, so it's Khan, Khan Academy, and it's an excellent resource that has opportunities for you to assist your scholars if they're behind, but also to assist your scholars if they're excelling. Monumental Math, one of the ladies who tutors for us, she has a website called Monumental Math and has all types of worksheets and so forth, and it's free. You can log on to it and set up your scholars. So if they're struggling in math at any level, so it goes all the way from kindergarten or even preschool, even through college. And there's opportunity for you to check in, and they can sign up. And each time they pass a level, then they can go to the next level, and they can go to the next level. So it's a great way to give them a resource for math. But if you've got scholars that are excelling, or you have those that are struggling academically, there are tons of resources that are available. But these are also questions that you can use as you begin to think about, how do I support my scholar? If behavior is a concern, parents, make sure that you're checking in on your child's behavior. Because when your child misbehaves, it impacts every other child in that classroom. And I've seen teachers have to redirect, and redirect, and redirect. And every time they redirect, that's 5 to 10 seconds that's taken away from instruction. So make sure that you know what's happening in the classroom in terms of behavior type issues. So before I go on to the next set, are there any questions? I know I still have your question, Aisha, and I think it's going to come up in a second. Any questions? Yes. Yes, you can. Yes, Khan Academy, you can create your own login. And also parents, you can create a login with your child so you can watch their progress on Khan Academy, which is really nice. Now, Monumental Math, what I like about it is that you can both create your own login and see how far you both get. I found that I kind of stopped at a certain level. It's like, I don't know how to do this math without a calculator. So,
You can also use Khan Academy without a login.
yes, you can. But logging in helps you to then track what you're doing and the progress that you're making. Yeah. And they're both free. I love free. So there are tons of resources that are free, and then there's some that you have to pay for, and sometimes they're not worth it.
And also, I want to share that the Pikes Peak Library District, they have free tutoring online from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. nightly, and you just log in to Brain Fuse, and Brain Fuse, you say, ask for help now. They can help in all kinds of subject matter. You have a live tutor, and you can upload a photo of some kind of math, or you can give them a paper to look at. So go to ppld.org, and then it'll be Brain Fuse, or you can Google Brain Fuse at PPLD, and you'll get there. But I've used it with my kids, and it's good.
It's excellent, and it's free too. They also have live tutors at PPLD, so this one you can do online, but they also have live tutors, and a lot of times they're on Saturdays and in the evening. Okay, and we're going to give you a resource sheet as well that has some other resources that you can certainly tap into if you're certainly interested in those. Those are tutors that we've vetted, and brain training or brain integration services, counseling services, and other types of resources. I saw your hand go up. Yes?
PPLT?
PPLD, Pikes Peak Library District. PPLD. Yes, .org. All right, let's look at a couple of what ifs. And I'll have you kind of talk about it at your tables first. So what if? What do you do if the teacher schedules a conference and the only time available is a time you can't make it because I have to work? Talk about it at your tables. What might be your response? I feel it over there. Move your seats out to the aisle. All right, what'd you come up with? Before I put up some responses, and then we'll see which ones you guys came up with.
I see patients during the day, so they schedule 6 months at a time, so I really don't have a flexible schedule when it comes to during the day. So maybe email and see if we could do a Zoom session during lunch. Like
Oh,
during my lunch break so I don't have to leave work, or I can send my husband.
okay. I like that. A Zoom session when it's, again, convenient for the parent. Okay. Anything else?
My husband is usually working when the teachers have their conferences, and so he just tries to make sure he tells them like way ahead of time, like, I know I'm gonna have a problem with this time, so what could we do, you know, way ahead of time so that they're not last minute trying to figure it out.
Okay. So again, if we have a plan ahead of time, we can let them know, I work evenings. There's no way I can come to an evening conference. So maybe we can do it on the weekends. Didn't think you could do that, but you can. You can request different times. So, tell the teacher you don't agree. Oops, wait. It's the wrong question. I'm going too far, too fast. Okay. Oh, there's no answers after that one. Okay. That's another what if. Okay. But yeah, you can just tell them, I work in the evenings. Most of the time the conferences are in the afternoon or evening. Sometimes they're during the day because they'll have a 2-day type window. But if you're working during the day, you can't take off. I love that. Let's have a Zoom session or whatever, or schedule it in advance. But you also can request a Saturday conference. So you can ask them, can we do it on a Saturday at 9 o'clock? I can absolutely be there. But I can't do evenings. And I can't do afternoons. I can't take off work to do a conference. But they are important to me. Yes?
Well, if you're regularly engaging the teacher and doing conferences on a regular basis, the pressure of a quarterly or a semester-wide conference isn't as, mandatory for you to be right there sitting.
There you go. Because then I'm not rushing to get to that 2-day window that they have it open. If I'm regularly scheduling time with the teacher, then I'm not concerned with the quarterly ones. Okay? All right, here's the next question. What do you do if you are in a conference and the teacher says something you think is negative about your child? How dare they? Tell the teacher you don't agree. You listen during the conference and not say anything. You tell the child not to listen to the teacher.
That really depends on what it is. Because I can go all three. I would just tell my kid not to listen. Just kidding.
See, you're going to be in the principal's office. So,
I don't think anything. A combination of A and something else. I mean, you want to respectfully bring up your point of view and just see how they see it and talk through it instead of just being silent or completely disagreeing.
okay.
Or plotting your kid against the teacher and saying, don't listen, putting them in the middle between you and them.
So again, positive intent. We want to always consider positive intent. So you can let the teacher know, I'm really concerned regarding that comment that you just made. Tell me more. Ask questions first before you attack. Why? Because your child is in that classroom with that teacher every day. And if you make that teacher upset, your child is going to feel it. Sorry, but they are, because they're human. Or your child is not going to necessarily get all the support that they need because the teacher's going to back away and not say anything to your child because they don't want the wrath of their parent. So if they say something, ask questions. Tell me what you meant by that. Tell me why you said that. Help me to understand what impact that's going to have. So I'm coming with tons and tons of questions before I become accusatory or before I go to the principal or anybody else. Get the facts first and write down what you heard, not what you think you heard. Write down and repeat it back and say, so I heard you say this. Is that what you meant? Or help me to understand what you just said because I don't want to take it out of context. Stay calm, because when you escalate, what does that do? They get defensive. And at that point, then we got a wall already that's been built up. So I'm going to listen, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm going to ask tons and tons of questions so I can have clarity. And then what I might say is, I don't think we're going to get to the end of this today in this meeting or this conversation. I would like to schedule a follow-up with you. When might that be possible? You, again, take control of the conversation. Because bottom line, that's your child, and you've got to make sure you've got enough information so you can make a good decision. I've had to have my child moved out of a classroom because of that to another teacher. I just didn't feel that teacher was very supportive of my child, of even other children in the classroom as well. She just wasn't a good teacher. She was a new teacher. She was just struggling. And I felt my child needed a much stronger disciplinarian type teacher. So I moved her out because I thought she was just having maybe too much fun in that classroom and she wasn't learning nothing. So I moved her purposely so I could make sure that she had a better experience than the teacher. And the teacher was a nice teacher. She just wasn't an effective teacher. So sometimes it's not even about the child, the negative piece about my child. It was more so the responses that the teacher was giving me in terms of questions that I was asking weren't fulfilling my need for what my child was getting in terms of that instruction. So listen, ask questions, paraphrase, make sure that your information is correct and valid, and then say, I really would love to schedule a follow-up with you because I think there's more to the story. And I'd like to also get some additional information because I would then go back and have a conversation with my child also and say, this is what I heard. Tell me a little bit more about what happened here. Okay, yes.
I'm a teacher myself, and the other side of that is when the parent really needs a meeting to the student, and I feel so, something like, oh, well, they're terrible at this. And that's an awkward position, because I don't ever want to say that to a student, but I don't want to undermine the parent. So just as a parent, trying to not demean the student, even if you're mad at them,
Yeah, and that's a hard piece also, is that when parents are, shut up, Johnny. Now, what did you say again? Shut up, Johnny. And I've seen that where parents are in conferences and they're being mean to their child. And yes, in that case, it's hard as a teacher to correct that because at that point you want to just say, shut up, parent. No. Johnny seems to be doing okay, but now I see where Johnny's getting some of his stuff from. But yeah, in that case, it's a hard thing. And all you can do, I think, as a teacher or even in that situation where it's reversed is just keep talking about the positives. Keep talking about the positives. He really does this really well. Really proud of him. Really glad, to have him in my classroom, those kind of things. Yeah. All right, let's see, what ifs? What if you have a conference and the teacher says your child is doing well, but the report card is all C's? Talk at your table. You say the kid is doing great, but he's got all C's on his report card. Okay. So what might that mean? What might that mean? That the teacher says they're doing well, but their report card has all C's on it. What might that mean?
Getting along socially, and getting along, not having trouble, not starting a show.
Yeah, they're not a rock star. They're fair to middly. They're doing well. But you got to ask more questions. So when you say my child is doing well, but they're only getting C's, help me to understand why their academic level isn't higher if they're doing well. Now, it could be maybe it's a young person with special needs. And so their ability to do C-level work is really exceptional. Okay? So you want to look at it from that perspective.
We were talking about boredom just now, and also maybe the teacher doesn't feel comfortable telling like something negative.
Okay?
Sometimes I've had a teacher.
Okay? So they just say they're doing well, but not sure what to say. Or the child could be bored. And so they're only doing the minimum amount of work.
It could mean the child just doesn't test well. There might be just an issue with the testing. Maybe they need verbal tests or instead of written.
So if they have an IEP or a 504, maybe some additional time may be needed. My oldest was not good at testing, period. I mean, when they said it's time for a test, she would just freeze up, couldn't finish it. But if you took her in the hallway and went through the test with her, she did well. But just the word test caused her to just have anxiety. So sometimes it's not that they can't do the work. Sometimes it's just based on their fear of testing, or they're just not able to do the work maybe in the time frame that's allocated. Or sometimes instead of giving some kids 20 problems to do, 10 would be just fine. 10 still gets them to what the learning that they need to have. So they don't need 20 problems. 20 stresses them out. So that's the same thing when I think about homework, is that if they've got too much homework, it just stresses them out. But if you give them enough just to make sure that they've understood the concepts, then that may be more than enough. All right. I think this is my last question. Yep. What if your child says the teacher just doesn't like her or him? That's what I used to tell my kids, number B. Get over it. Teacher got too many people and kids in that classroom not to just like you, not like you. That wasn't a nice thing to say, but I did it. I was a bad mom at that time. That was my first child. She got I had to learn from the first child.
I would ask to observe the class just to see how the teacher interacts with everybody, so then you can have more objectivity. And maybe the teacher's like, I don't know, having a bad day, or maybe she's going through a divorce, and you know what I mean? Like, whatever it may be, it's not personal to your child, but it could be affecting everybody, but your child is egocentric, so
Yep.
just see what's going on first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sit in the classroom. Observe the class. I'd love to do that. Because sometimes that just gives you a perspective in terms of how they're interacting with other students as well. And it may not necessarily be your child, maybe somebody else's child, but yours just may have gotten the brunt of it. But again, explain to the teacher how your child feels. That's what you should do. Say, my child feels as though you don't particularly like them, or you seem to pick on them all the time. And sometimes the teacher will say, that's because I know they have so much more in them. And they just get with the wrong group. So I used to tell, especially with my oldest was always the one, is Don't have her with a desk near other kids, because she's going to talk to them, because she's a social butterfly. And it doesn't matter whether she's finished her work or not, she's still going to talk to them. Because she's got to make sure everybody else, and everybody else seemed to get their work in on time, but she couldn't get hers in on time. So tell the teacher, let the teacher know, okay? All right, just a couple of reminders for you. Remember, you are your child's best advocate. Stay involved, make sure you're communicating, and the biggest piece, go with your questions. Ask questions. Yes? Okay, I didn't answer your question yet? Okay, let me go back.
So what is the verbiage if you have a concern that really needs to be addressed, but you don't want to offend the teacher or the school or the curriculum? What are some positive ways to like really address your concerns without, you know,
burning your bridges?
Basically.
So I would just be upfront and honest. Sometimes if it's things related to the school overall, talk to the appropriate personnel, because the teacher in many cases can't necessarily change policies and procedures and so forth. So I would have a conversation with the principal and say, I kind of noticed this was going on, or I observed this. Can you tell me more about why this change was put in place, or why this particular policy or procedure, or why this curriculum was adopted? Because I really like the curriculum you had before. So can you give me some additional information in regard to that? So I would again go with a list of questions. If it's something in the classroom, I would say, you know, I observed this the last time I was here. How is that working for most of the students in the classroom? Because it seemed like there were a few that were really gravitating to that, but most of the class didn't seem to connect with that type of instruction. Okay? So just ask questions. Always do it again in a way that is not accusatory, but more so I'm gathering facts. And then once you've gathered your facts and you have concern, then voice those concerns. I'm really concerned that this curriculum is dumbing down this standard that I know students are supposed to know by the end of the year. So I would like to know what else you're going to add to this so that it can be of more value to my scholar and maybe others that are at that same level. So don't be afraid to speak out, because that's how changes get made sometimes, is by asking those questions. But one of the things I never do is I never beat up people because that doesn't get us anywhere. So best intentions assumed, always emphasis on learning. Collaborate, examples, listening, being respectful. And just as you want the teacher to be respectful to you, you need to also be respectful to the teacher. Parents, don't be cursing teachers out. That's not appropriate. I don't care what the situation is. Don't scream and holler at the teachers. Everything can be done in a respectful manner. And if there's something that you don't like or you believe that it needs further conversation, then schedule a meeting with the school, with the principal, with the counselor, or whomever, so that you can all get on the same page. Because bottom line, your scholar is still in that classroom or at that school. And even if you take your scholar out of that school and put them somewhere else, and you really haven't addressed what the real issues are, you just take them somewhere else. So get them addressed, and even if you choose to go to another school, and I always tell parents, if a school's not working for your scholar, then don't stay there. If you believe they need something different and it's not being provided, don't keep them there because move them where they're going to get the best education possible. So just a couple of standards and evidence outcomes. So there's just some, you go on the CDE website in terms of standards and instructions. This is what the state says that they should learn at kindergarten, at second grade, at fifth grade, at ninth grade. So go on the website and see. It doesn't matter whether they're private, public, or charter schools. These are still standards of what students should learn. And then you can look at the SAT in terms of, again, standards and so forth. And then this Chat GPT. I had to go on that. That's a artificial intelligence robot. And you put questions in there and it answers you. I was fascinated by that. So if you've got some questions or whatever about something academic, or you can do it for other stuff as well. But you put the question in there and then the robot answers it. And it was pretty good, some of the answers that they gave. So it can be about anything. So you can have chats in there and it's being done by robots. So pretty cool. But you can put things in there in terms of standards and it'll give you information on those standards. But you can put other stuff in there too, which is pretty cool. All right, last piece of work for you on your handout. What is one thing that you're going to do differently to support your child this year? What is one thing that you are going to do differently to support your child? And I'd like you to think about it from this perspective. What are you going to start doing? What are you going to stop doing? And what are you going to do differently that you've not done? Now, those of you that this is your first child and you're just starting school, you can come up with anything. But those of you that have had children in school, what are some things that you're now going to shift and look at? I'm going to start doing this because I've not been doing it. And I'm going to stop doing this because I've done this and it's not working. Or I'm going to do this a little differently because I think it'll have a greater impact on creating that level of engagement with my scholars, teachers. So I'd like to hear from 5 people I haven't heard from tonight. I don't want to call you out, but I will. 5 people I haven't heard from. Either one thing you're going to start, one thing you're going to stop, or one thing you're going to do differently. So just one.
I'm going to be doing weekly grade checks for my 7th grader and using his portal much more efficiently than I used it last year to help him stay on top of his assignments.
Excellent. Okay. How many people did I say? 5. Okay, just counting.
I don't know if I already contributed, but my son, I brought him to his new school that he's going into as a sophomore last night at a welcome night. We introduced him to each teacher, asked what about his curriculum, his textbook, and even what the name of the teacher that they preferred that they be called by students. Each teacher had a different, either first name, Mrs. So-and-so, or last name, or a letter for their name.
Okay.
So things like that, and just I'm going to do that more. Just introduce myself as a teacher at the beginning of school year.
Excellent.
With the student.
Okay. Come on, 3 more. Haven't heard anything from. I'm going to pick you out.
Encourage her to self-advocate more.
Nice. Nice. What grade are you in?
I'm going to be a freshman.
Oh, yeah. You got to advocate for yourself. Good job. I saw your hand go up.
I want to start making things more fun for my son wherever I can. I feel like he's just been a little bit too serious. Yeah. And maybe, it's just, anyway, I feel like he hasn't enjoyed school as much the last couple of years.
What grade?
Because of that, he's a sophomore now.
Yeah.
So.
You gotta mix it up. They gotta have some fun. They're children. Have fun. Yes, school is important, but life is more important. I got one more. I didn't forget. Okay.
So unfortunately, this year I wasn't able to go in and meet the teachers because of different circumstances, so I want to email all of them and just introduce myself and just say, hey, just give them information about my students, and then telling them my contact information and just starting that open line of communication with them.
Okay, beautiful. Education is important because children are 10% of the population, but they are 100% of our future. But it's also important to have fun as part of that whole piece. So how many of you have children in private school? Raise your hand. Okay. In charter school? In public school? Okay. All right. So the expectation again is that you meet the needs of your scholar no matter where they are attending school, because you are your child's first teacher. Thank you.